from the tent where we reside. I'm Shaban Ahmad, 19 years old. I'm a student studying software engineer. In this barbaric starvation war, we have displaced 5 times so far. Now we are in Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in the middle of Gaza, Deir al-Balah. I'm taking care of my family as I'm the oldest. I have 2 sisters and 2 little brothers and my parents. We live in a very hard circumstances, suffering from various things such as homelessness and limited food and extremely limited medicine. And the only things between us and the freezing temperature is this tent that we constructed by ourselves. I made this campaign to restart a new life in Egypt and evacuate. Thank you.
النار أنا مشتعلة فيها في جسمي في إيدي هنا اليمين وأنا بنقذ أولادي. فيش أقل من لحظة كتلة من جهنم، كتلة من لهيب جهنم نزلت علينا، أكلت أولادي وأكلت خيمتي، وزوجتي كانت نايمة في مكانها ما تحركتش الثاني. طلعت هيك في أولادي، مين أنقذ؟ مين أطلع؟
Genocide. Noun. The systematic killing of substantial numbers of people on the basis of their ethnicity, religion, political beliefs, social status, or other particularities. Genocide. Verb. To commit genocide against, to eliminate, a group of people completely.
Palestinians here in the village bid farewell to Ayman Abed, a 58-year-old man. And he was arrested by the Israeli forces, but before that, he was here, sleeping with the family on the rooftop of their house. Everything is still in its place. You can see the charger, the toys, and even the coffee. The Israeli forces arrested Ayman and took him, and just less than an hour, they returned him as a soulless body. His sister says that she's seen his face and saw signs of torture. Not only that, the medical sources we've been speaking to confirm the fact that there are signs of torture on his body. And the family says that they believe that he's been taken as one way to pressure his son.
I received a young boy into the emergency department during one of the mass casualties who had half of his face and neck blown off. Luckily, the organs that are vital for breathing and blood supply to the brain were preserved. They were visible, but preserved. And he was talking to us. He couldn't see himself, so he didn't know what he looked like at that point in time, and he kept asking for his sister. His sister was in the bed next to him. The majority of her body was burned beyond recognition. He didn't recognize that the girl in the bed next to him was his sister. His entire family, parents and the rest of his siblings, were killed in the same attack. That boy survived, and the next day I went to see him, a very young plastic surgeon, one of the few remaining plastic surgeons in Gaza, because the others have either been killed or have fled, understandably, had removed part of his chest and created a graft to cover those vital organs of the neck. He was lying in his bed and mumbling because it was so difficult to talk, and he kept saying, I got really close to him and he said, I wish I had died too. And I said, what? And he said, I think my entire family has gone to heaven, or it's not my entire family, his exact words were something effective, everybody I love is now in heaven, I don't want to be here anymore. That is one of so many stories. I'm giving you, I'm so sorry, Leila, but I think people need to hear this. I'm giving you the story of one child. One of my healthcare worker colleagues, a young nurse, one of the most dedicated nurses I've ever met, was trying to evacuate a patient when Al-Shifa hospital was bombed from north to south. He carried that patient was eventually called by Israeli forces, not by name, but by uniform. You, the person in scrubs, come here. He was subsequently detained for 53 days. He reported physical, sexual, and psychological torture while in detention and ultimately released because he had no crime. After he was released, he worked constantly because one, he was so dedicated, and two, he suffered from severe insomnia from the trauma of his detention. He was always in the resuscitation room of the emergency department, cleaning out sand from the eyes of people pulled from under the rubble, trying to comfort them. One day, overnight, he fell asleep holding the body of a dead child, still with the breathing tube in after they had failed to resuscitate the infant. Another day, I asked him to go home because he hadn't slept in so many hours, so he left the hospital. A couple hours later, I see him in the emergency department trying to resuscitate a man whose whose both legs and one arm had been blown off. I asked him what he was doing in the hospital. I thought you went home to rest. And he said, this is my sister's husband. They woke me up to tell me that the aid distribution site had been bombed and my sister's husband had gone there. So I went to find him and found him severely injured. So I helped him resuscitate this patient. His home has been destroyed. He's a young man, he's engaged, he's trying to get married, he had a whole life ahead of him, and he was a very dedicated healthcare worker. I'm giving you two stories, a child and a healthcare worker, but these are representative of literally almost everybody I know in Gaza. I don't know a single healthcare worker who has not lost multiple members of their family.
Gaza is a total disaster. If you can think of something bad that is happening in the world, it's happening in Gaza or to people from Gaza. The things that I saw there that really stood out or really impacted me and made me realize what's actually going on were a few. Number one was the malnutrition and starvation, which is deliberate. That's perfectly obvious. Even American senators are giving speeches saying that it's deliberate. The second thing was the targeting of children with gunfire. That I was not expecting to see, actually. I knew how many children had been killed. I knew about the massive killing in general, but I just assumed it was all from bombings. But that doesn't explain children getting shot in the head, and definitely not every day. I mean, literally every day I was there, I saw a child shot in the head. That's not an accident. That's deliberate targeting of children for death. That's murder. That is not something that my government should be supporting, that the United States government should not be funding this. Benjamin Netanyahu famously said, if the Americans cut off arms, then we'll fight with our fingernails. Okay, good, you go do that. Go enjoy fighting with your fingernails. Leave my bombs and my guns and my money and my prestige and my government and my people out of it. That's what I would say.
I've seen a whole spectrum of injury patterns inflicted by Israel on Palestinian civilians in Gaza. The injury patterns I've seen most consistently are things like crush injuries as a result of Israeli airstrikes on homes. Between 60 to 70% of those injured and those who make it to the hospital are actually children. I can tell you that I have seen injuries that indicate deliberate targeting of children and deliberate targeting of civilians. So I've seen things like gunshot wounds to the abdomen of children, to the chest. I have documented evidence of gunshot wounds to the extremities of babies. Your priority is saving civilian lives and minimizing civilian casualties, then your responsibility as an American citizen is to advocate for an arms embargo against Israel. I think this is a no-brainer for the American political elite, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, it does not matter. The right thing to do is to stop arming Israel.
If I Must Die by Rifat Alaria, November the 1st, 2023. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself. Seize the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
I don't think that people really understand why that child lost his head. I mean, they understand that Israel killed him, but the overpressure from the bomb dropping, so that people understand this, the brutality. When a bomb drops in such close proximity, there's something called overpressure. The amount of air and the amount of pressure that that air escapes from that area of that strike is so massive that that small frame of the child is rattled so much that their rib cage